Traveling to Consciousness, exploring spiritual journeys to find answers in uncertainty.
What is up, conscious monkeys? Welcome back to another episode of Traveling to Consciousness. As always, I'm your host, Clayton Cuteri. And in today's podcast, we are going to be talking about the lovely, the also seemingly controversial Second Amendment. Seems like a great follow-up after we've talked about the First Amendment. So why not move on to the second? Because everyone loves some good controversy. Before I jump into this, I want to make a quick shout out to Ethan, because Ethan was a longtime follower of the podcast and all of my content, which is amazing. He shot me a message on YouTube. He DM'd in one of the comments, and he started saying about how he wanted me to talk about more controversial issues. He said he was all in on the campaign, said he was voting for me, said we need more conscious individuals in politics, and I'm right there with you, Ethan. I think, it's going to take a lot more than just me getting involved in politics for us to fix not only our country, but the world. And that's a whole longer conversation, but I did want to give a big shout out to Ethan, because I think he is right. I think, I need to jump into some of these more controversial issues, if you will, give my input on them, to give you guys more of a holistic view, if you will, because I think a lot of the nuance gets lost in conversation nowadays, and we're in a very polarizing times with how social media and everything is set up. So let's take a step back. Let's look at what we're dealing with here. I do want to kind of make a general note that I feel like this type of conversation is very there's a lot to it. And I want to say that with most of my things. I think whenever I'm jumping into these conversations about my policies, I do want to make that note that I feel like what I touch on is maybe 80% of the conversation. I completely agree that there's probably other little nuanced ideas that I don't cover that are contributing factors to the issues that we have today. But what I'm setting forth and focusing on really is like those 75, that 80% numbers of what is going to make leaps and bounds to fix the issues. Of course, once you make those leaps and bounds, there will still be some edge cases that we can polish off and rust and, kind of fix. But I just wanted to also make that kind of caveat. So with that being said, let's set the stage. Let's set the stage of why the Second Amendment, what the purpose is. I know our education system has failed us all. So in case you did not know the purpose of the Second Amendment, or, one sec, maybe even better, I got my handy dandy little notebook here. Not notebook, but my Declaration of Independence and Pocket Constitution. Let me actually read you the Second Amendment, because I don't know if you've heard it in a while. So it's very short. It's actually a very short amendment, one of the shorter ones. And it says, a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. What essentially this is saying, in order for us to have a free state, a free country, to be free people, our right to bear arms, to have guns, should not be infringed. That's the intent of the Second Amendment. It's all about protection against a tyrannical government. If you look at it in context, the Founding Fathers were leaving a tyrannical regime, which was the Britain, which essentially was Britain. And in order to defend themselves, in order for us to have a country in the first place, they had to use guns, they had to use weapons to fend off the British. So we have to make sure we're looking at it in that context of, okay, this is the intent of the Second Amendment. That's why we have it. That's the purpose. And where the direction has kind of gone, right, is we've seen mass shootings, we've seen horrific events occur in America, and we tend to put the blame on the gun, of course, right? And I very much sympathize with this, because I think that there is a belief that if you take the guns away, then there will not be any more mass shootings or high death situations, right? And I think that, this is a kind of a, I don't want to say facile, and I don't think it's a very well thought out or valid argument, because I think, where we can look to this would be like the UK. Because the UK started implementing much stricter gun control laws and got to a place where they got rid of majority of them. The problem they then ran into is that people still started carrying out mass violence using knives. And so then they took the next step to start trying to ban knives. I don't know if they actually did it. I should probably look into that, but they at least started talking about wanting to do that. And I think that we have to realize that it's people. Now, again, like I started off, I think there's a whole bunch of different stuff we can talk about here. I think that there are situations where we need a little bit more background checks. We need a little bit more scrutiny whenever going into and understanding what, who's buying these weapons. I do think we also should look at the fact that majority of, mass shooters, mass killers are doing this in the name of, or they're finding weapons of their parents or someone they know. So it's definitely an imperfect system. And I think there's a valid conversation for that. But I think that conversation is not going to get to the root of the issue. And that the root of that issue that I think is going to clear up 75-80% of this issue is mental health. I own guns. I think they're interesting. I think it's kind of cool at some level. Don't get me wrong. And the antithesis is that if things hit the fan, if our government starts being tyrannical, if they start mandating that we stay inside for no good apparent reason, and they start creating fear, that I have a weapon that I can protect myself against from another individual who decides to act authoritarian towards myself. But what all of this skips over, right, is that mental health aspect. Because I think that if we look into those who commit atrocities, whether it's school shooters in particular seem to carry it out, but even just these mass violences, they seem to have a very weak, broken mental state. This can be for multitude of reasons. And I think majority of the factors come to a lot of the things that we talk about. A lot of things that we talk about in the core policies of the American Congress Party, which is we have to stop, and even from a spiritual perspective, is we have to stop blocking our inner eye. I think a lot of the things that we do in this world and in this country blocks our inner eye. Things like spraying chemicals on food, like lack of education. Lack of education, you have more financial stress. You don't know how to regulate your emotions. You don't know how to be at peace with yourself. You don't know how to take a joke. And that builds up, and then you'll lash out at the world because you feel so tight internally. Your inner eye is so closed that you become possessed, if you will. Maybe it's by evil. Maybe it's from just that much stress creates atrocities in the world. And even furthermore, that you'll never hear, is that we have a pharmaceutical industry that's also poisoning the minds of people. People who get on antidepressants feel detached from the world. Things like SSRIs, which have had a strong correlation. I know correlation doesn't mean causation, but there's a strong correlation between mass shooters and being on SSRIs. And that's something that you'll never find in the corporate run media, because they don't make that connection, because they're bought and paid for by the pharmaceutical companies to hush hush. So we have to open up people's inner eyes so that they can see a brighter future. They're okay with taking on some stress now, a little bit of difficulty now, so that it creates a better future in the long run. And I wonder if, this is kind of interesting, I wonder if, the whole conversation around gun control is like this is a theory. I'm just kind of thinking this off the top of my head. I wonder if at some level we're kind of pitted in this gun control conversation to shift the blame away from Big Pharma. Again, I feel like you have to repeat this a lot, but again, I know this isn't 100% of the issue. Again, we're talking maybe 75, 80% of the issue. But I wonder if that has to do with it, is that they create this narrative of like that the guns are to blame. Because if you can blame the guns, then we don't have to blame the drugs that we're poisoning people with, and then we don't have to blame the fact that we've closed everybody's inner eye through different forms of brainwashing and basically lack of education, chemical food on our food, poisoning ourselves with the medication that's coming into our bodies because of the lack of food and nutrients in our food, because of the pesticides that are being sprayed on them. So I have to assume that that's all kind of connected. And quite frankly, and that's kind of like my short term idea. If we're looking big picture, picture, right? And this ties back in the beginning, right? The purpose of guns is to be against a government. If we're looking big picture, I could definitely see a future in a world where we no longer have governments. And if we no longer have governments, we'll no longer need guns to protect ourselves from governments. Because the way it seems to me is that governments have perpetuated some of the most atrocious taking of lives in human history. So even that, I feel like, is something we have to look at. And again, that's down the road. I wouldn't say we have to become a lot more loving and caring of each other before we can even entertain that idea. But I just want to say that I could see a possibility of that being a part of our future. So I guess my proposal would be is to look at how you can be more loving and caring in your life. See if there's ways you can be more, appreciative of people. Because I'm telling you, when our inner eyes as a society start to open up, there's so much more peace, so much more existence and love to be had. And quite frankly, this is going to happen very quickly with the education. I'm actually in the process of writing a book about indigo education. It's going to be a whole detailed thing It's going to be a whole book about, what I was taught when I was in India, how we can limit our stress, how we can actually start enjoying life. So be on the lookout for that. I'm still in the process of writing the first draft, but, it's never too early to promote. And I think one more thing I want to jump in here. It kind of drives me crazy. Honestly, this might be one of my pet peeves. Maybe something I have to come to peace with. Is anytime I hear the term assault weapon. Oh, we have to ban assault weapons. Oh, assault weapons are so bad. And I'm sure if you're listening to this, maybe you're someone who has said that before. But again, and maybe this goes to my, I'm just realizing this now, is like maybe this goes to my war on language conversation. We have to ban assault weapons. Here's the deal. Assault is already illegal. It is already illegal to commit assault. Okay? If I assault you with my fist just became an assault weapon. If I use a hammer to assault someone, the hammer is now an assault weapon. So whenever, and again, I don't, like, they have to be intelligent. Like, they have to know what they're doing. But to me, when I hear that, it drives me crazy because, and maybe I'm just realizing this now, is that this is another piece of that war on language that I keep talking about. Is that they just want to keep saying, we have to ban assault weapons. We have to ban assault weapons. And for some reason, our mind makes an instant connection with guns. Guns are not inherently an assault weapon. If you use a gun to commit an assault, then it becomes an assault weapon because it was a weapon that was used to perpetuate assault. So I don't know. I feel like anytime I hear a politician or anyone ever say we have to ban assault weapons, my mind just honestly is like, okay, you should not be in a position of power to make these comments. But I'm now realizing, I think I just realized it in the middle of this podcast, is that it's actually them like perpetuating that war on language. Because again, if we can't agree on the way words work, the way that words mean, what they mean, how they mean them, it creates more division. We become a more fractured society. And we have to stick together. Because that's the end goal here. You know? We're all brothers and sisters. We're all cousins. We're all aunts and uncles. We're all moms and dads to each other. And we have to start acting that way. But if we can't have fundamental terminology to agree upon what it is we're talking about, that's when society starts to break down. And I think that's a big issue that we have. I mean, I didn't really even talk about this one in my immigration one, but go check out my immigration policy if you're interested in hearing that one. I know that one's already released. But having a basic language, right? It can be so much more difficult to converse with others. And I know that's a big thing happening in Pittsburgh right now, is like, even with construction, like there's not a whole lot of, English speaking individuals who are performing construction. And so whenever you have people who English maybe is their second, or maybe they don't even really know English, it becomes very difficult. It becomes very difficult for us to communicate. And so, and I look, don't get me wrong, I love learning new languages. I definitely think everyone should be learning new languages. It gives you such a different perspective on life, and they're beautiful in many ways. And I honestly wish I knew more languages, and I'm studying as many as I possibly can right now. But the point I'm trying to make is that if we don't have a fundamental agreement of what words mean, we're going to descend into chaos. And I have to feel as though that war on language is a piece of that puzzle, to give a ruling elite more power over the individuals that they rule. And maybe it's a parasite in the brain. Maybe it's some sort of psychosis that they're in. But to me, it just does not feel in alignment with the human condition of being a human, of protecting those who need protected, of caring about those who are having a difficult time caring for themselves. So we really need to find a way to stop this war on language, but find a way to care for each other. And I have a feeling that will get rid of so many of our issues. When our inner eyes start to open, we're going to see a much more beautiful world. Because I can feel it in my life. Oh my gosh. I didn't learn about breath work. Meditating I've been doing for maybe 10-ish years now. For probably about 10 years. And breath work, didn't even know about that until maybe like 5 years ago. And all of this I had to teach myself. I had to do the research myself. I had to learn. And I can only imagine how much more peaceful I would be had I learned about this whenever I was in high school or middle school. Oh my gosh, would I have been in so much more peace now? And with that being said, like, I still have so much further to go. But I look at the world, I look at the people around me, and you can feel whenever someone's more angry than you are. You can feel when someone's discontent, when someone is stressed. And my heart goes out to them. And, a whole part of like the spiritual community is, you got to heal yourself before you heal others. And don't get me wrong, I still have so much more to learn, but I have gotten to a point now where I see that it's a part of my mission, my divine mission, God-given plan to help fix that within our education systems, within our food systems, within our political systems. Because one of the most tragic ideas I think that has been placed upon the spiritual community is that you should just sit around and do nothing. When the reality is that we need spiritual people to be the ones in control. We need spiritual people to be the ones who are shaping the world, who are showing the path forward for all of us. Because it's up to the conscious individuals. The conscious individuals are going to be the ones who see a path forward, who want a better world for the future, who aren't cared about the materialistic 100-year life, 200-year life that we have. They care about the future. They care about creating something and leaving something better than the way they found it. And so hopefully, to get this back to guns, hopefully that can be echoed in the way I view this. Is that I want to leave this world a better place than the way I found it. And God only knows how much more better it can be. So let me know what you think, because I feel like this is a tricky one, if you will. One that's a little less straightforward, right? One that has a little less what do we do with it idea. Because we definitely have to remember to keep in mind that the intention of guns is to protect ourselves from a tyrannical government. But at the same time, we have to realize that individuals are the ones who are perpetuating these atrocities. So another tricky situation. And I truly believe, and this comes back to the fundamental principles of American Congress Party, which is, I truly believe, if we can fix the systems of health, if we can not be stressed, financially free, taught about finances in our education system, not worried about the future, have a positive outlook on the future, people won't be going around committing mass killings. So let's do this. Get involved with the American Congress Party, because I feel as though I can't see or hear anyone else who is promoting ideas like this. I wish there were, but I don't. So get involved with the American Congress Party. And the best way you can get involved is to share this podcast. That's number one, far and above the best way. Gets my voice to more people, and it perpetuates these ideas quicker. So I appreciate you guys for listening. But if you don't share this podcast with someone, then we're going to have a conversation about it whenever I see you in the sixth dimension.